find throughout your travels. Now, can you tell me a little bit about the show and what inspired you to do it?
Yeah, well, the show it's called George Goes Everywhere. The whole premise is I go to a city and I see basically how much fun I can have without spending more than $100. Just kind of on the ground activities, not more than $100. And I guess the genesis of the show was just kind of my personal life, where my travel ambitions outweighed my bank account, and so I kind of would kind of do that in my personal life. And I worked in television as well, and so at a certain point, it just became natural to join these two aspects of my life of making shows and traveling on the cheap.
I love it. I definitely love it, especially now that it's post-COVID and we want to go out there. Some of us don't have big budgets, so we want to still have experiences because we've been locked up for so long and it's been stressful, right?
Yeah.
So what has been, out of all the episodes, what has been your favorite place to visit and most memorable?
Well, I'm from the New York area, so I am biased towards New York. But that's not a real answer because I am so biased. I'm a big fan of Chicago. Honestly, that's one of my favorite cities in the whole world. So that I'd been there before, but it was a pleasure to be able to return.
And what time would you suggest visiting? Would it be spring or would it be winter? Because I know that it's freezing, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not afraid of traveling in the winter. I think traveling in the off season can be one of the ways to actually travel on the cheap, is because the hotel, no one else is traveling then. So hotels are cheaper and flights and stuff. But Chicago winter obviously has its own set of issues. But I mean, Chicago probably, you're best off if you care about the weather. Probably May, June is probably where you want to go, where it's not too cold, not too hot.
Yeah, in California, we're a little spoiled. I don't know that we can handle Chicago weather. I haven't been there, but it's on my bucket list for sure. So when researching a place, do you use Yelp? What is your source? Like, what do you do? What's your background prior to visiting a place look like?
Well, I do a ton of research. That is one of the things I always say is research more than you think you have to. And one of my favorite websites is, have you ever heard of Atlas Obscura?
I have not.
It's just like a collection of kind of odd locations in places around the world, really.
Wow.
That's a great starting point. And then beyond that, I mean, you check the usual suspects of, the TripAdvisor, just kind of Google things, or like Google, different Google, weird places in such and such, or unusual places in such and such. Try different terms, kind of see what you come up with, and, go down to the third page of Google results, not just the first, kind of keep going. When you think you're done, go one more page, see what happens.
So I know that prior to visiting a trip, you're doing a lot of research. What are some of the obstacles that you find when you're, trying to choose an area and you've got $100? Like, what are some of the obstacles that you're experiencing when you're traveling?
I mean, the biggest thing is just, sometimes you see stuff that just is awesome, but it costs more than $100. I mean, and there's just nothing you can do about it. And you see it and it's kind of frustrating because, it would be so great on the show. It would, play so well. There was one place I was researching, and there was a racetrack there, and there was a thing where you could get into a race car and take like a couple laps with a professional driver. And I'm like, oh my God, that would be so amazing. But it was like, it was over $100. I think it might've been over 200 actually, now that I think about it. And it's just, but that's the job, right? Is, you got to find something different then.
Right. And I love that because, we sometimes get caught in some of those like tourist spots that can just be really, really expensive and just maybe overrated. So I love that you're giving ideas to regular people like us that, don't have these huge budgets. So what advice would you give to someone who has a family perhaps maybe you have to go over, obviously $100 would not be enough, but what kind of like budgeting tips would you give for someone that has children or, more than, just themselves?
Yeah. I do not have kids, so it's not really my family travel is not really my forte. But I think, I think probably the same principles apply of just, doing research, finding things that are, undervalued. I mean, that's the word I think you can use, undervalued, like things that, are a little away from the tourist section of town where cheeseburgers cost $23 and, stuff like that.
Right. And like the parks, right? Like I noticed that you were looking at some of the parks in some of the episodes, historic landmarks, things that I'm thinking educational, you can kind of like, because it can get really, really expensive with kids.
For sure.
And so what do viewers what is next for you, and what other places do you plan on visiting?
We're unsure what's happening with with further episodes. I have put together a pitch for it, but we're still kind of waiting to see how these current ones perform, and then we'll make a decision on that. But the cities I've pitched, I picked a whole bunch: Miami, Tampa, Orlando, Charlotte, DC, Baltimore, Cleveland, Brooklyn. I did a New York episode, but I think doing a Brooklyn episode
I love that.
its own could also work. And then also Toronto and Montreal. We haven't been to Canada, but I think those two would be great episodes as well.
So do you think you will go international at some point? Because I know that
I would like to, yeah, but it's obviously a decision we have to come to together.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, George. This has been so much fun, and I really, really love the show. So I'm definitely going to recommend it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks.